Good afternoon. This is Kathy Bird with Fresh Art International, and I'm coming to you live from the Untitled Art Fair on Miami Beach. And I'm thrilled to have a friend and a superstar artist with me today, Amy Sherald. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi. We need you a little more. I was just thinking today about the fact that when we first met, you were waiting for a heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was out of a job, and we were encouraging each other professionally and personally to get through some hard times.
Yeah, definitely.
You've grown so much since I've known you, and you've encouraged me all the way along for these 6 years that I've been doing Fresh Art International.
Yeah.
And I just got a $50,000 grant from the Night Arts Foundation.
I know, that's so wonderful. Congratulations.
It's just so great. And your big news is that you've been commissioned to paint the portrait of Michelle Obama.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really exciting. And I can't wait till I can actually talk about it, because I can't really talk about it right now.
I know we're going to just talk around it.
Yeah.
Well, for those people who would like to know more than they're going to hear in the next 30 minutes from us, there is a podcast episode that I recorded live with Amy last summer at Monique Meloche Gallery in Chicago.
Right.
And we had such a great conversation. It was at a very fraught racial tension, a moment of racial tension that was painful.
Painful and still very intense.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I remember feeling that your work, even then, and still remains, really important work in the way you depict the Black figure.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say that the background a little bit.
Yeah.
You grew up in Georgia.
Yeah, I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. Daughter of Geraldine and Amos. Columbus is a small town. I went to private school, had the same art teacher from kindergarten to 12th grade, and really decided that painting was going to be my thing during my first field trip to the Columbus Museum, when I saw a painting that changed my life, because it was actually a painting that had a Black figure in it. And I had never seen that before, because all the exposure that I had gotten was just from looking at encyclopedias, and so I was looking at European paintings and, didn't see myself, but was looking at them for, the different elements of style and things like that. But that was life-changing for me.
And you ended up in Baltimore going to school at the Maryland Institute College of Art, right?
Yeah, Upon recommendation of a very close friend of mine named Maori Holmes, who's actually the founder of Black Star Film Festival, she suggested Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore to me, and it never even crossed my mind, because I had my sights set on New York, but it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made.
I think Baltimore being its special place for you, you're calling it home now.
Yeah, I'm definitely, attached to the city and its people, and have met some wonderful people since I've been there, and made some lifelong friends, and, remain active in the community, and ready to take, responsibility for it, as I grow and have the capacity to do more for the underprivileged.
So Baltimore is a social context, political context for your work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know your subjects you've drawn from New Orleans and Baltimore and particularly some New York. Let's talk for a minute about the fact that you're not a fast painter.
No, I'm
You're
not.
You're taking your time with this work. And what makes you do, it's sort of like slow art.
Well, it takes me a while to find my models. That's the first thing. I'm really looking for something very specific when I find my people. And it's something that I haven't really been able to describe. It's the same feeling that you might get when you see someone that you think you know. It's just some kind of recognition. But the best way that I've been able to describe it is that they exist in, like, there's something about them that exists in the present, the past, and the future. It's just like a kind of, there's an awkwardness there. There's a sense of, I don't even know. Yeah, it's just, there's something. I don't know. I don't think everyone else could see it either.
What I know is the fact that you paint these subjects in a color fields instead
Right.
of in an environment. And so I
Right.
think that really contributes to the timeless
Yeah.
feeling of the work.
Yeah. I mean, that's also important to me too. When I studied with Odd Nerdrum, a painter, a Norwegian painter, he spoke about his ideas of what made a good painting, and one of them was that they were heliocentric, and he kind of stretched the definition of the word, but it's basically that they had a sense of timelessness, and so I really that really resonated with me, and I think that it is the main reason why I don't place the figures in an active background where where there's context to be able to interpret them by. I think the subversiveness comes in because it's just you and the viewer, or them and the viewer, and they're very present in these portraits. They know that they're being painted and they're connecting with you. And I hang the paintings about 7 or 8 inches lower than work is normally hung because I want that kind of intimacy between the painting and the viewer. Yeah.
It's a conversation, the painting itself, because all of these subjects, these individuals that you're painting are looking straight at us.
Right. Which has historical significance too, because a lot of the imagery that you see of Black Americans historically, we weren't even allowed to make eye contact with white people at a certain point, so a lot of that is about a soft confrontation, and I'm not a very confrontational person, so I don't make work that's very, I like to make work that teaches, but also allows the viewer to not feel as if they're being, literally taught something in that moment. So like they have a chance to create a narrative and to interact with it based off of their life experiences.
And your subjects are consistently Black people.
Yes.
Your people.
Yes. I've been Black for 44 years, so I like to paint Black people now. Again, like it's a critique on art history. And it's really meaningful for me to put these images out there in the world for people to see and for people to interact with. And I think they still have a universal appeal, even though they are people of color. So I get emails all the time from people from all over the world that really relate to the imagery. And that's really special to me. Their humanity is visible. And they're just, American people doing stuff. And I think that's really important, that the imagery of Black people, or just Blackness in general, doesn't always have to be charged or, be making a statement. It can just be.
Well, it is making a statement by just being,
Right.
I think, actually. And it'd be interesting to talk right now about some of the influences on your work in terms of the genres, things that you like to look at and that continue to inspire your subject matter and their poses.
Right. I'm really inspired by photography, and I think it's because photography was the first place that, looking at these older daguerreotypes, of where I was able to see these positive images of people that looked like me from the 1900s. Once the camera was invented, it was the first time that we were able to become authors of our own narrative, which is really important. So, the family photographs and, things like Du Bois's exposition in Paris, where he had 367 photographs of Black Georgians. This is shortly after the Civil War. Just showing them doing things, so it was just to counter the narrative of the, racial propaganda that was also being put out there at the same time. So a lot of photography and a lot of cinematography. A huge fan of Wes Anderson. His palette, the way he directs, is really inspirational to me. And I'm putting it out there that I want him to make a movie with my figures in there.
All right, we'll let him know. We'll forward this conversation to Wes Anderson. Because indeed you do dress your figures in vivid fashion, and they have an amazing style. Each one has such a persona that's very individual, very appealing.
Yeah.
And you just can't stop, well, I can't stop looking at them.
Right, I agree.
I'm thinking that I see you still render the skin color as a more gray. It's not a particular
No.
blackness, a darkness to the figures.
Yeah. I think well, in the beginning, this is in hindsight. I realized that the work that I was making previously in graduate school was really ambiguous, and that was kind of a luxury. And then I became aware of how the narrative of the Black body on canvas was going to be marginalized. And in a way, I was trying to avoid that by not painting the skin color. But every decision that I make about my work in the beginning is always aesthetic, so I'm really an emotional and intuitive painter. And then, you sit back and look at what you made and you try to figure out, what subconsciously is present within that narrative.
We were talking earlier about this fantastic opinion piece that was submitted to the New York Times by Naima Green,
Yes.
another artist.
A photographer, yeah.
And I think I'd love to sort of look at what she said and think about what it means for you. She was talking about her own photography and photographing a woman in a park,
Yeah.
instead of on a concrete setting, urban, harsh setting
Right.
her in nature, and how her professors, I believe, or her critics,
Yeah.
were saying that's not real.
Yeah. Well, they said it wasn't charged enough. I felt the same way. I think what's important, and what she said in the article, was that Blackness doesn't always have to be presented in a form of of activism or of oppression. That we all have our own individual experiences of Blackness, and each one of my paintings represent that. And I think that's why we connected. I thought that her commentary on the Michelle Obama portrait was spot on.
Well, she was saying that it's an important signal that you were selected.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, because I paint everyday people doing everyday things, and everyday people is Michelle Obama, and she became the first lady, and so it slides right into my narrative.
and let's talk about Michelle Obama. What do we think of her?
I think she's great. I think a lot of us women, all shapes, sizes, and colors, we see our best selves in her, and she is a fantastic role model, and I think she gives a lot of people hope with her presence, and we become more confident just by knowing she's out there. It was just nice to know that she's out there in the world.
And this rising in this past year, the rising of feminism and demands for equity and fairness and pay and treatment and our sexuality, a recognition of who we are.
Yeah. That's all a conversation. I don't think people are having that same conversation around Black lives the way they are around white women, because I think that white women are allowed to be victims, and we're still, we still have to convince people that when something happens to us that we didn't deserve it. So I think that there's still two different conversations, and they're not being recognized in the same way.
Which makes it even more relevant that you continue to paint the Black body.
Yeah, very much.
As a figurative painter, I think you've chosen always to paint real people, and maybe we can share a little bit how you find these people, real people.
Yeah, just living my life. I go to the grocery store, or I'm in the park, and I'll meet somebody, and then I'll approach them and ask them if I can paint them, and I let them know that I say I'm an artist, and I say like I'm a real artist, and I tell them like I have work here and I have work here, so that they so I can disarm them, and then usually get their information. And sometimes I call them immediately, and sometimes it might be a year later. It just kind of depends. But I will photograph them, and again, sometimes I look at the image after I photograph them, and they don't work in the moment, but I'll look at the same image a year later, and all of a sudden it's okay for me to use it like something. I don't know what happened in between, but all of a sudden I like it, and it becomes a beautiful painting.
I'm interested in how you title your works. There seems to be storytelling in the title as well as in the
Yeah,
subject.
yeah. Um, the first time I really started thinking about titles was when I was paired with a poet for like a publication for the Studio Museum of Harlem. And she wrote a poem about my work, and one of the lines in that poem was "well prepared and maladjusted," and I really liked it, so I decided to name. I think it was the fourth painting I did in the series that, and after that, it was I had something that I had to try to outdo each one. So so that's kind of that was the impetus for that, and then my sister is a writer, and I a lot of times if I can't figure out what I want to title it, because I think if it was left up to me, it would take me about 6 months to name each one. I just need to be able to separate myself from it in order to be able to look at it, as an object and not like, what I just spent, a month trying to finish. So she helps out a lot with that, and we'll go back and forth, and then usually settle on something.
They're very poetic.
Yeah.
Tell us what work you have here at Monique Meloche.
I have 3 paintings. 2 of the models I met when I was at the Joan Mitchell Center residency in New Orleans. I spent that 4 weeks just specifically running around the city looking for models. And I was there in July. I didn't realize that it was going to be so hot and nobody was going to be outside. But luckily I found around 6 people. And then the other model is from New York, and she's actually somebody that a friend of mine sent to me, and he, sent me a Facebook message, and he was like, "Check this girl out. She looks like she'd be in an Amy Sherald painting." And so I looked at her, and he was right. And so that does happen a lot. And I think that once you look at all the figures, you can kind of see and pick up on what it is that I'm looking for, because that starts to happen. People send me images and think, she belongs in your world. So it makes sense.
That's very cool. Well, I think the description of what Naima Green anticipates your work will look like about Michelle Obama is that it will be a spectacular realization of her spectacularity.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, that commission has shot you up in the art market.
Yeah, I mean, so
we are in an art fair.
They keep calling me obscure, and I just don't understand that, because I had a waiting list before this happened. So like I had a career before it happened, and I'm not saying it didn't help, but a lot of the articles say that I was plucked out of obscurity, and I just don't understand that.
I agree. That was a bit harsh because you've had a waiting list for your paintings for at least 3 years now.
Yeah, since 2015. So I think it just makes for a good story. So we'll let them have it, I guess.
Yeah, but let's say that that's helping. That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
We're not
good.
gonna
I'm
complain.
definitely experiencing the Michelle Obama effect. I have lots of fans.
Yeah,
and I'm going to try not to disappoint the people. I think I'm going to make them proud.
I think you are too.
Yeah.
I'm sure your family, your mother in particular, is super excited about this next chapter for you.
She is, and I'm happy that she's here and alive to witness it, because she's 83. And so, in her lifetime, this is something that's truly special, because she was born in 1935, and the world has changed several times over in her lifetime. So.
And I think that your own family history has got to be is charging your work.
That too, yeah. I didn't grow up with a grandmother because she was from Alabama and, died because of racism. And so like that history is part of my history. And those things are things that you think about in your everyday life, even if they're not surfacing all the time, they're in your subconscious. So.
Tell me what you've seen in this art fair, other artists, figurative painters that you've been out in the fairs that you've been visiting while you've been here, or collections that have impressed you.
I don't even know whether I know their names, but I did see some great work. I would shout out Deborah Roberts. She's also been having a good year, and her work is really amazing. Jordan Castile was at the main fair and really love her work as well.
I saw a beautiful photography project by Carrie Mae Weems.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, and there was there's a gallery from Amsterdam that has a photographer in their booth that I really like. It's like people in boats in the ocean. I mean, that's a minimal description of it. It's a lot more intense than that. But I was really moved by those enough that I kind of want to buy one.
I love it.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to start collecting art once you start making it.
I can't wait, actually.
I love that. Well, thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been tremendous.
Yes.
And I know that as the description of vision and grace will prevail in your work, I just see it coming.
Thank you.
I want to let everyone know that I've been in conversation here today with Amy Sherald, based in Baltimore, an American figurative painter who is a rising star and has been for years. Tomorrow's show, Fresh Art International, I invite Torquase Dyson and Adler Guerrier to come and talk to me about black abstraction.
Yeah.
So it's going to be come and listen in, Amy, if you have time.
I will.
Thank you for being here today. Everyone, stay tuned for more contemporary art talk.